Hello, hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I'm really excited to be having a conversation about leadership because I think it's such an important conversation to have. And the truth about really leadership, it is not a role, it's a way of being. So I would like to welcome Melinda Cates. Melinda, please share a little bit about yourself. And I am excited to hear how, because so many in leadership think it's a role instead of being that way. And I can look back through my career of how many people that I worked with, and I saw leaders, and I also saw people who took it as a role.
I love that. And Tricia, look, thank you so much for our connection, because I absolutely love it. And the destiny of two people in completely different parts of the world came together to connect like we have. And our relationship actually reflects a lot of what we're going to talk about today. I'm Melinda Cates. I'm from New Zealand. You and I have talked about what neither of us particularly like titles because it isn't about what we do. And I will say, in this day and age, and where humanity is evolving to, it's about who we are and not who we show up as, but our energy, our presence, and what we actually emanate. And it's a bit of a journey stepping into being able to connect to the truth of who you are and really leading from oneself from that place. But before I dive into that and go too deep to start with, I live in New Zealand, as I said, and uh, my title I like to play around with because none of them they reflect, I suppose, a level of what I do, but how do you truly describe what you do when it's more of an experience as opposed to something that and when I say experience, it's something you feel, it's something you go through internally that you then express externally. So, to put it in simple terms, I'm a soul aligned leadership mentor or facilitator, as I like to call myself as well. Not a phrase that or term that's commonly known, because a facilitator is someone who walks beside an individual and supports them to work through what they're experiencing and discover the answers inside of themselves. Because I totally believe in self empowerment. I believe in people being able to be self reliant. So, to discover those answers within themselves and also be given tools so that when they do experience times in their life where maybe no one's around and they're going through a bit, instead of being scared or shutting down or closing off, they know all they need to do is turn inwards and find those answers to guide themselves through what they're experiencing. And that is the essence of self-leadership, which is what I'm all about. So I am loving focusing currently, and it's not at the exclusion of other people, but my focus is on emerging leaders and revolutionary leaders. So individuals that find that they may not fit, they may even be like I've been, a rebel. They're truth seekers, they're soul searchers, they're individuals who have felt that they're or have been labeled as too much in their life and that they know they're different. And that difference is they go against the norm of the traditional ways of doing things. And it's not out of rebellion, it's actually out of they know there's a better way. They see the dynamics that go on, the conversations that happen that are surface that don't get to the guts and the truth and the symptoms of what's going on. They only deal with the causes. They see pathways being paved that they know what the end result's going to be, and it's not going to be one that supports people or is the best way forward. But what they have done in that difference is felt lonely and isolated, because so they've dimmed themselves, they've silenced themselves and even hidden themselves. So what I know, part of what I'm here to do, and I believe me, I've journeyed this process myself, is to walk with. those individuals, for them to remember who they truly are, to reclaim their true self and the essence of themselves, that part that is the difference, and to own that and embody it and integrate it so that they do stand with confidence, so that they know what their calling is, so that they stop dimming their light, so that they do speak up. But it's not about speaking up in a way where you have emotion driving it, because what's important is to release all of the things that took you away from who you truly were, which is the emotional processes, the limiting beliefs, which you know so deeply and so well, um, the behaviors that were imposed on you or that you adopted as a result of not being accepted and not fitting in, but about unraveling all of that and clearing that space to allow your truth, but also your care, your love, your compassion, your consideration, your respect to shine through, and for those leaders to be the new path creators.
I love that because I'm sure there's so many people who will be watching this and are watching this that can say, yes, I was in a meeting. Yes, I was in a conversation. Yes, I was with people where all of a sudden you felt totally constrictive and you just pulled everything back and you stopped talking and you stopped sharing or giving your advice or your point of view. Especially I noticed this for myself in particular is in the early years that I was working, I would stop giving input in meetings because it would be overlooked. It would be, you know, people didn't want to hear it. They were so stuck in a certain way of being within the company
Yeah.
that they did not want to hear it. And it was ridiculed or put down or, in front of everybody, people would point at you and really talk down to you. And it's not an easy thing to be in. It's not an easy place to be in. And I remember with one particular individual where they said something and I responded, and then they came back at me. And then it was like my brain just shut off and my soul just came right back and went boom, 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 boom. And I stopped talking. I was very calm. It was very, and the meeting ended quickly and my boss and the CEO were talking. So it is such an interesting thing to look at. So I would love for you to share about that and about people who, I mean, even after that, it took me a couple of more years to get that piece where I was so okay being within myself to actually start talking and sharing and giving my thoughts and ideas out there.
Oh, completely. Because if you look at leadership, if we go back even probably 30 or 40 years ago, um, and I know 25 years ago, I was working in corporates where a lot of the people who were supervisors, who were managers, who were leaders, had progressed into those roles, not because of their ability to walk beside people and to know people, but because it was skills based. It was also about tenure. You've been here long enough, you know the business well, you have the skills. So when it came to dealing with people, that was completely foreign. I remember 3M was one of the revolutionary companies that actually, with their scientists, and I may not have the story exact. I did work for them in my earlier days, but their scientists, they almost had a different leadership process because their scientists were brilliant with their field, but not so much with the people. So they were very clear on that, and they started identifying the people to help those people grow and evolve in their cultures. But one of the things that also is a misconception is that leadership is purely organizational based or community based. Every single person is a leader, because if you strip away the title, and I'll come back to the example you were sharing in a moment, if you strip away the title and look at the purity of what leadership it is, it's the influence you have. It's the impact you have on the people around you and the situations. It is the example that you set. So for each of us, and even walking into a shop, what's the energy that we are emanating? How are we treating people? How are we receiving people? How are we interacting? And most people don't have that level of awareness of their, hold on, they don't have the level of awareness of the impact they're having on others. What they're more focused on is what's the influence and impact others are having on me. And so, what I heard in your story and the situation you experienced was your soul, the true you, could see what was happening, knew what was going on for the people, knew what was right, knew the truth. And that is powerful. And that sits within us wanting to be voiced, wanting us to acknowledge it and to hear it. But even we struggle with that because we have, as human beings, been conditioned to listen externally. And we learnt that at a very young age. So the other part of you, the human side of you, received the messages you were hearing, the shutdown, the energy, the reactions, and interpreted it as potentially you were wrong, that you were the one that had the issue, you were the one that was different. But your soul, your true self, knew otherwise. And it called you. And what was beautiful from what you shared was your connection to that part of you was stronger and started to become more dominant and taking up more space within you. And you get to a point, I mean, I put a post up recently, you get to a point where you can't suppress your truth because that is what's natural and real. The rest of it, and it's not demeaning the part of you, but your emotions, your conditioning, you fitting in, you meeting others' expectations, that is a normal part of you, a part that's become normalized based on what other people have
Mhm.
asked of us, based on the cultures, the environments, the examples that have been set for us. But that's not real leadership. That's leadership based on fear, leadership based on power. And when I say power, it's a perceived power, which stems from lack of self-worth, vulnerability, and a need to feel safe and to have power over, instead of pure power, which is an openness, a gentleness, a clarity, a love, and most importantly, acceptance of the people around you, which is why it's a state of being rather than a title.
Yeah. Yes. And that's actually a really good way to differentiate between the role and the beingness of being a leader. It doesn't matter what position you're in, whether you're in a corporation, whether you are an entrepreneur, it is who you are being to the world.
Absolutely. And sadly, we're still at a stage, a significant stage with humanity where those that don't have the level of awareness of being, don't have the level of awareness of their truth and that there is a different way. They need evidence in order to accept and receive your presence, your truth, your integrity. And a friend of mine beautifully shared with me, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing her story because she only told me this yesterday. She works for an education institution, and she was sharing with me that when she stepped into that organization, she's surrounded by academics, and academics are brilliant. They have their place. They've helped us evolve as mankind. But there are limitations in lots of different areas and spaces in our life. But she doubted herself. And she's faced a situation recently that she just knew the interactions, the processes that were going on weren't right. They weren't honoring the students. They weren't honoring what is the right way of doing things. And it just so happens she's doing a course as well. And this course required her to do a project based on work. She's voiced her truth to her boss. She's voiced her truth to various people. And when she's done that, because others aren't accessing their own truth, that truth that's being shared with them feels unfamiliar. And anything unfamiliar for us, when we're not connected consciously to our true self, it can scare us because the energy is different. And so the easiest way of dealing with it is we shut down and we don't hear it.
Mhm.
So she's felt incredibly frustrated, similar to what I no doubt you felt, and many people who know they're being called to a different way of leadership and to stand in their light feel, is that frustration of that resistance, that frustration of that closed offness,
Mhm.
because we can see how simple it is that it can be done and changed. Doing the project, she put all of the evidence together that backed up her truth. Sadly, we're at a stage where we still have to do this. She presented it, and those resistant people now have to listen because they cannot fight that truth anymore because it's in black and white. And that's part of what we're here to do, is to also help those who aren't aware, who aren't, to use a term that's often used, as awake to the true potential that lies within them. We have to give them evidence because that's what their logical brains need in order to accept it and receive it. They have now listened. They are now accountable for what they haven't put into action. But what's most beautiful to see is my friend now sees how valuable she really is, and that
Oh,
it's not about them being academics and her not having those numbers or what is it, letters after her name. She has an experience and a wisdom and an insight that is creating change, but it's not change for change's sake. It's change because it's about respecting and honoring the people, respecting what is the right thing to do.
yeah. And I'm loving this story because it is showing that we can absolutely be a leader with our being instead of it being a role. And what I would love for you to share and to get into in a little depth is for somebody who is up and coming into the leadership, but understands that they want a depth to that. What types of ways can they connect to that piece of them that is being the leader?
Firstly, they already are connected to it. When you feel like you're different, when you stand in a space and you go, pardon me, there's no one I feel connected to here, you're feeling it because you're actually connected to yourself. And in that moment, what you're being called to do is recognize that connection, but most importantly, remember it. Because we've adopted different ways of being, we've adopted different identities and even created them. But that's only one part of us. So instead of focusing on what's going on externally, come back and look internally and feel within you. Where is that connection emanating from? What is that truth that I'm scared of possibly listening to? And that truth won't judge others because our true self doesn't stand in judgment. Our true self is accepting, but it sees the reality of what's going on around. And embrace that part of you and thank it for drawing your attention in. And what I call that is you're knowing the voice of your true self, the voice of your soul. And the more you can take time to listen to it when it talks to you, or even go inwards and ask it questions, the more it will guide you on the steps you are to take. But not only in that moment when you recognize you don't feel connected to others, you potentially, because you're possibly awakening or you're in transition between who you've been and who you are becoming, or already who you actually already are, and you're remembering, you potentially still will be susceptible to other people's energy. So the disconnection that you potentially are also feeling is a mirror of the disconnection that each person around you is potentially experiencing as well. Their disconnection from that part of themselves, their disconnection from their truth. And in knowing that, it's knowing that the more you own those beautiful parts of you, the true you, the more you send an energy out that supports them to feel safe to start feeling it within themselves. Because true leaders, through owning who they are, through getting to a place of peace with it and allowing it to shine. Safety isn't a word that exists anymore. It's a rightness. But that rightness creates safety for others to step into who they are. Cease making your difference wrong.
That's big. That's really.
Apologize to that part of you. You took on board what others said, what others believed, others' expectations, which was fear-based. Apologize and thank that part of you for never being silent, for never, for not stopping and calling you to stand in your truth. But that part of you also knew you would step into owning that part of you when the time was right. And we don't get to decide that time. That time happens when internally things start aligning, when you get that feeling that's stronger that says no more. Or like my friend yesterday, when things externally start lining up and the opportunity is there for you to do things differently. And if you feel the fear and stepping into it, stop and say to yourself, this is an old feeling, a feeling I recognize and know so well. And thank you for helping me get to here, because without you, I wouldn't have felt safe enough to be where I'm at now. And now I release you, because now I choose me and I choose to step into me. And when you voice your truth, be aware if there's any emotion, download that, whether it's voicing it out loud, writing it, whatever you do to release emotion, then drop into the bottom of your belly and speak from there, because when you do, it's done with gentleness, with respect, and with honoring both of yourself and the people around you. And one of the things I know is the more gentle you are, which is a sign of you accepting who you truly are, then the more gentle the energy is, the tone is, the words are, the vibration is that comes with it, the more you actually will be received by other people, whether consciously or subconsciously. I hope I've answered your question there, Tricia.
Yes,
All
yes, you have. But I actually want to, one of the things that you've said more than once, and I really want to reflect upon that, is the disconnect. One of the signs that you are about to create this level of being is your disconnect. Your
Yeah.
disconnect with those around you, your disconnect with whatever's going on, whether you're in corporate, you're working in your business. It is like this level of neutrality as you're looking at everything. And it's this, I want more. I want to show up as more.
Yeah.
I want to step into that piece of me that is that being.
Well, interesting. It'll also be what your, for those that call it this, their intuition or their knowing calls them, and you'll hear the words in your head going over and over. I had a client recently who said she was sitting on the beach, she was minding her own business, reading a book, and she started hearing in her head, Melinda's to coach you. Melinda's to coach you. No, I'm not saying that I'm the one for you. But listen to those words. Don't deflect them. Don't ignore them. Follow the energy as to where it's coming from. And if it's coming from the bottom of your belly and pure source, then you are being called. And that is your true self calling you. And if you ignore it, you'll be woken up in the middle of the night being called again. You will have situations happen in your life that reflect back that calling. You can make this a longer, harder process, or you can accept it's your calling and go with it. And I agree with you that it depends. It's interesting how a person receives information and processes it is often how you're called. So for some, like if you're auditory, you will get the words. If you are, I separate kinesthetic from tactile because for me, kinesthetic is whole body, tactile is hands and feeling and sensing. If you're tactile, you'll feel the energy building. If you're kinesthetic, you'll feel and in your whole body like the energy in your skin is expanding or tingling, or it will vibrate at some level. It's saying, hey, notice me. Or if you're visual, you'll get pictures. And know that you're being given that because you are meant to do something. And I know how terrifying it is. I remember it was 2000 and it was the America's Cup in Auckland. And a whole sequence of events that you could never, ever have predicted unfolded. Where I had, prior to the America's Cup final, been getting all these messages, and I was just starting to tap into that side of me. And I was going, who's this for? It was for the captain of our New Zealand America's Cup team. And I was like, there's not a hope in Hades I'd meet him or pass these on. And I won't give too many details, but this day unfolded where my best friend ended up getting us into the exclusive VIP area where the presentation was happening. And that man ended up standing 5 feet away from me. And I shared the message with him. And then it was like, I can't believe this has happened, ran. but, but I was being called. And I remember driving home that night because I dropped my best friend off to home. And I just burst into tears because I realized how much I have fought that part of me, how I hadn't trusted it, how I'd controlled it, how I'd made it wrong. And yet all it wanted was for me to listen because I'm an auditory, so words are the thing for me. And I realized the tears that flowed of I had been fighting me for all those years. And at that point, I made that conscious decision, no more. It's like, how far do we want to take ourselves to the edge? And it's not a matter of jumping off, it's a matter of jumping into and down into you. And that is scary. And a lot of people say to me, and I remember it so clearly when I experienced it, when I really truly tapped into my true self for the first time. And people were like, whoa, Mins, there's power. I said, yep, you feel like you're 10 foot tall and you could take on a football team or a sumo wrestler. And they're like, yeah, it's insane. And I said, it'll balance out because what happens when you do access that state of being, of that self-leadership, of that true self and that power is you unlock power that's been suppressed in you. You unlock energy. So of course it feels overwhelming to start with because suddenly it's able to flow through you again. And it's been sitting there just waiting for you for all this time. And there are people who will walk beside you who have walked the journey already. And you will also surpass those people as well. But reaching out for help was a really important part for me because some of it I didn't know how to navigate it because I wasn't fully in me and fully trusting me to navigate it myself. But I accessed people to stretch me when I couldn't see things. And now I support other people's processes and working with them because I know they're going to awaken other parts of me rather than helping me connect to my true self. And there's a
Mhm.
difference. No, I went off on a bit of a tangent.
Well, I definitely want to go back to two spots, like the spot where you were talking about our knowing. Um, for me, because people may be like, oh, I have to look for one way. Be aware it can come in any way and in more than one. For me, it's a feeling, it's words, it's pictures, it's like an adventure land in there. Okay. So if you get it in more than one way, that's okay. It doesn't have to be one, and you don't have to have an expectation around it. And I definitely want to note that I want to share that when you're sharing that when it comes to trusting ourselves, because of everything that we've been through, it may not always be easy to trust ourselves.
No, no.
So, it's important to definitely, I want to touch on that a little bit more because I know for myself, shit, it took me years to trust myself because it was always told no, no, no. And then that was when you were younger. And then as you get into college and then you go and start working, it is like every time you attempted to, not that you attempted, that you did trust yourself, people would be like, that's not, no, no, or something would happen and that trust would get further and further and further.
Yep, totally. Just before, I'm sorry, I've just written that down so I come back to it. Just before I want to go to the first point,
Mhm.
one of the other ways you know you're being called is, and I put a post up recently about it, is when for a lot of us who are expressives like I am, so what that means is I externalize my processing, I'm very vocal. A lot of people will say an extrovert. Um, and I'm really comfortable with emotion. And what you will find is that your truth will build to that frustration and it will pop. And it pops at times that you go, damn.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I had a few friendships end as a result of that after. And I'm not encouraging people to get to that point. But if you can capture the frustration and recognize, so these layers, capture the frustration and recognize what is the truth underneath it. And ask yourself, what am I to do with that truth? Don't listen to your head. It will tell you what other people are telling you to. Don't listen to your heart. It will tell you based on what you, or the pain you went through. Drop to the bottom of that belly and listen to your knowing. And it may take a few times you asking it to get the simple, clear message. What do I do with this truth and frustration? And the more you keep dropping down to that part of you, that's one of the most powerful ways of growing that trust with yourself. But you can listen to it, you can see it, you can feel the message from the knowing. But the question is, are you prepared to act on it? Because that was what happened in that situation in 2000 was I was willing to stand up and follow this and act on my knowing, even though my head was screaming, you're going to be an idiot and this guy's going to think you're a nut job. But I wasn't doing it for him. And this is where people can get lost in it. And trusting yourself and you taking action. This is about you growing your trust of you. It's not looking for an external outcome, it's looking for the internal outcome.
Mhm.
And the more that happens, the more you will see the external outcome, but it's not look at an expectation of the result. Because if I'd gone in and looked at, oh, well, this guy's going to come back and he's going to give me feedback and all the rest, etc., and that's going to prove I trusted myself, well, then I would have been let down. He stood there in shock for at least 2 minutes. What it was look what unfolded as a result of me taking action and trusting this process. Because in trusting you, then there's the next level, which is trusting the process that unfolds as a result of you taking action. But what often happens is people go, oh, trust the process in order to trust myself.
True. Very true.
And that doesn't always match up.
Yeah,
But
that's a very good point.
you were born trusting yourself. I often ask this to people. Were you born trusting yourself or trusting others? And they say, oh, trusting mum and dad. I said, no, go deeper. Who were you truly born trusting? It wasn't our mum and dad. It was us. We came into this world full of trust.
We did.
And we got made wrong that eroded that, not eroded the trust, it eroded the connection to our total trust of ourselves. So the most powerful other way of reconnecting to that trust is to remember, but not just remember in a memory, is to take yourself back and be you energetically, the age, how you saw things, how you felt about things, and connect to those times in your life when you have totally trusted you. And say to that part of you, thank you. Thank you for the connection that is there. Thank you for reminding me. And I give this trust permission to grow. I give the connection permission to grow.
Mm.
And I commit to listening to you, to feeling you, to seeing you. And if I'm not, please remind me.
And it will remind you. And it will remind you, especially when you make these verbal commitments. It's like you're telling the universe, all right, I am here. I am ready. Let's have this conversation. You're opening yourself up to the universe within you, your being. And it's a ride. It's a ride. It's a ride.
And I love the fact that you said the universe inside of you, within you, with the words you used, because a lot of people look to the universe for answers. I'm going to encourage you, do that secondary. You're becoming codependent on or dependent on the universe. The universe wants you to be self-reliant and to work with the universe. So come in and ask yourself the questions and start finding those answers internally instead.
Mhm.
And it's about trusting that part of you. And then the universe, God, whatever people's beliefs are as to what is around us and that supports us and that connects us, that will then start showing and presenting itself externally. But don't go looking for it, because the moment you go looking for it, then you're needy of it. So you're trying to grasp it. So you're not trusting it. You will push it away or you'll distort it. Allow it to come to you. Create the space, the openness, the receptiveness to allow it to firstly come to you internally. So that requires clearing the channel, which is healing the emotions, unraveling all the conditioning, moving more out of the subconscious into the conscious mind, and then feel your energy externally and open up to allowing the different things that are coming to you as a result of your growth to step in and be a part of you, or to connect with you, or to interact with you, or even just to provide you with messages.
And I like how you were saying, because I'm seeing it, everybody's the universe, the universe. But the reality is that sparks within us. The universe is within us. The God within is within us, our higher selves. And again, I don't care what anybody calls it, it's within us.
Yes, exactly.
So when we start to, oh, I'm waiting for the universe to give me a sign, it's now you're handing your power
Exactly.
to the universe outside of you.
Yep, exactly.
I've definitely asked. I'm like, all right, I've got, I was in the middle of creating something and I heard clear as day where to go. So, I'm like, okay, I want A, B, or C. These are my choices. Now I want to know which is highest and best for what I was doing. And the license plate in front of me was B. I said, okay, let me see the next one. It was B again. I go, I'm done. Okay, we're going with B. But I
Yeah.
had already had that idea. I had so many things going on and I was so excited. And I was like, all right, all right, all right. What is my next best step here? I have these pieces. How do I put these pieces together? And I waited to hear and I got my signs. When I had already had that, I'm like, all right, I think it's this. I believe it's this. But I also wanted confirmation, which I'm sure you're going to tell me is a little bit needy, but that's okay.
No, 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 I'm not going to tell you that at all. But only you will know whether you had emotional neediness sitting in there. And it is okay if that is that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
because we're going through a transition phase of letting go who we've been, how we've operated, how we've functioned. And that transition phase is no man's land. And we do need we need science. We're human, we're moving more from human self operating, because I don't want this to be rejected. Please know our human self is why we're here. There's so much beauty about who we are as human beings, but that's another story at another time. But you're letting that go. We're letting predictability, we're letting evidence go, we're letting logic go, we're letting all the human processing. Even emotions aren't part of our true self. They're a human process and they've got a beauty to them and value to them, which the more we can actually honor and appreciate that, the more we will actually heal our emotions faster. And in fact, I love emotions coming up because it reminds me, woohoo, I'm in a human body. But some of those steps to getting to trusting you is we need evidence, because we're unraveling our lack of trust.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
can't, to jump from there to there. There may be individuals out there that are less conditioned or are so ready that can do that, because I didn't do that. I went through exactly what you're talking about. Look, I remember I'd get a knowing and I'd go, okay, I'd flip a coin to see if the answer was what I was getting was real. I remember getting the tarot, not tarot cards, but messenger cards out. I remember going, I mean, even that example at the America's Cup, I remember sitting there going, okay, if I'm meant to be here and connecting to him and giving this message, then the second I was testing the universe, the second plant along is going to start moving. And lo and behold, the wind had come up and it was only the second plant that would move. But that's part of it, is we're being supported, just like your example, we're being supported to trust, because we can't trust our trusting. Does that make sense? We
Yeah.
need to learn to trust to trust. And even and every time a bit of emotion comes in, every time we experience someone's expectations of us, that trust wobbles, but it's an echo. It's an area to embrace, because it's your system is saying to you, you're ready now to either heal, unravel, and release this so that you trust even more. And then you get to a place where you don't need any evidence anymore. And in fact, even those that look for evidence, they often don't even see the evidence because they're looking for something else. And I remember where I live, I wasn't living here full time for a number of years. And I used to come up here on holidays. And I remember driving home and getting halfway through, we have to go through this windy forest. And my knowing was screaming, you need to go back. Now, logic was saying, time wise, I needed to keep going. And I'm going, well, what do I need to go back for? And I went, oh, my lip balm. I forgot me and my lip balm, love my lip balm. So I went, can't drive any further without my lip balm. So I turned around and drove back here. The lip balm was in my car. But the reason why I'd been called back was I'd turned the fridge off by mistake.
Oh,
So if I'd come back just looking for the lip balm and not being open to why else am I being called back here, I would never have noticed that, and I would have lost a stack of food. And I would have had a big puddle in my place, which I probably wouldn't have seen for a few months. So things will unfold to call you to trust you, and you don't know what the outcome is. And that's the beauty of it, is that if you can find that part of you that is natural to you, it's part of our leadership and our state of being, is that pure, and we see it in children, that curiosity, that inquisitiveness. What am I going to discover that my true self and knowing is calling me to trust me on this journey? What am I going to discover? Open your I was going to say blinkers, but it is, take the blinkers off, take the earmuffs off, open up to the magic of what you potentially can experience in every moment, because you never know what's going to unfold. That's a gift for you, whether it's painful or whether it's joyful.
very true. Very true. And it is about that time. So I would love for you to leave where people can reach out to you and speak to you further. Um,
Yeah, interesting. On my personal Facebook page, which Tricia, I'll give you the link for that. I also have my website, which is in the process of being, it's in its own evolution as a reflection of me. And there's also a gift that I'd like to share that people can access, which I'll give you the link for as well. But if there is anyone that would like to have, I call them, what do they call them? Truth power sessions, which essentially are a discovery call or an exploration call where they'd like to explore something for 30 minutes. Then I'm open to people being able to connect with me and have a conversation around where they're at, as far as what they know they're being called to do, or where they want some support with their trust. Because the more the more I know you're supporting them as well, but the more we can support individuals to connect to their own self-leadership, their true self, the qualities that are pure at the essence of us, then the more we're going to have leadership and communities and homes and organizations that's going to consider people, it's going to be people focused, that's going to support others to step into who they are. And it will create that ripple effect.
and I will put the links below. So if anybody wants, you will find the links below this call. And I hope everybody has an amazing rest of your Tuesday and some of you Wednesdays. And thank you so much for joining me today, Melinda.
Tricia, thank you from my soul to your soul for having me here and for this beautiful experience. Thank you.